Hello, this is Jove Aguas, and welcome to my lectures in philosophical anthropology. Now, this is the first lecture in this course, and I will be discussing, well, as a sort of introduction, I will be presenting a survey of the different philosophical notions about the human person. I will be dividing my discussion into two. I will first talk about the Oriental philosophies or Oriental conceptions of the human person or man. And the second part of my introduction or my survey I will focus on the Western philosophical conceptions. All right. So if we're going to look at philosophy in general, we're going to find many different understanding or conceptions about the human person. And of course, we generally classify these conceptions into according to the two major traditions, the Oriental traditions and the Western traditions. I say traditions because there are many traditions under the Oriental and there are also many traditions under the Western. All right. So, under the Oriental tradition, we are going to discuss, just general an overview, uh, Hinduism, then Buddhism, then Confucianism, and then Taoism, by the way, Taoism and then Confucianism. All right. So, and then under the Oriental or Western tradition, we are going to discuss this according to the four historical periods in the development of Western philosophy, namely the ancient Greek period, and then the medieval period, and then the modern, and then the contemporary periods. All right. So, let's start with Hinduism. Uh, The Hindu conception of the human person can be seen in their religious and philosophical doctrines, which we can find in their sacred texts. And the two important sacred texts in Hinduism are the Vedas and the Upanishads. Okay. Uh, Now, the conception of the human person is closely related to his relationship with the whole of reality. And reality in Hinduism is interpreted or explained through the two important concepts. These two important concepts, or concepts, are the Brahman and the Atman. Okay, so they are not really concepts, but they are the two aspects of reality. Okay, so let's start with the Brahman. For the Hindu, the Brahman is the ultimate and underlying reality. Okay, while the Atman is the individual reality. Everything is Brahman. Okay, everything is Brahman. Everything, or the totality of what we see and know, is Brahman. However, the Brahman is not something that we can see. It's not definite. Well, it is the underlying principle of all things, but we cannot see it. All right, because it's something that is rather abstract. It does not have any uh, specific features. Okay, so we cannot totally understand it cannot really totally uh, comprehend the Brahman because it's something that is beyond us. Okay, now what we see and know are specific qualities, specific features, concrete realities, and these concrete realities are the Atman. So the Atman is that part of reality that we can see, that we can, uh, we can experience, right? It has a definite, it has a definite qualities. Okay, so everything is Brahman, all right, but the specific objects that we see of this reality is the Atman. Okay, so imagine, for example, the air. The air fills our environment. It's everywhere. Okay, it's around us. But we cannot really point to the air. We cannot really say that's air. Okay, that's an example of Brahman. It's everywhere, but we cannot point it as that's the Brahman. But suppose we put the air inside a balloon. So imagine the air inside the balloon. Now we can now see, or we can now identify the air because it is inside the balloon. Right? Now that is the Atman. So the Atman is that aspect of reality that we can identify, something that we can point, something that we can know. Okay, but the Brahman is something that we cannot know. Okay, so we say everything is Brahman, everything is air, but the Brahman is indefinite. Okay, but the air inside the balloon is definite. Now, if you pop the balloon, the air will go out, will escape of the balloon, and then the air will join the Brahman, the air outside. So now it becomes one with the Brahman again. Okay, so uh, the air outside is the Brahman, it's everywhere, and the air inside the balloon is the Atman, and that is now the self. Right? So the human person is part of that reality of the Brahman. He's part or one with the Brahman. But he is also a concrete and individual reality, and therefore he is an Atman. Right? Now, the ultimate goal of the individual, of the human person, is to be one with the Brahman and reach Nirvana. Okay? Nirvana is a perfect state. Okay? It's like heaven, a paradise for the Hindus. Now, in order to do this, the human person or man must purify himself of all his attachment to the world. Okay? Because for Hinduism, the world is an illusion. By illusion, it means it's just an appearance. It is within the power of the Brahman to create appearances. And this appearance is, this power of the Brahman to create illusion or appearance is called Maya. So the world as an illusion is a product of Maya. Okay? So it's not that the world does not exist or unreal. It's just that, yes, it exists, but it is not something that is absolute. It's not something that is permanent. It's just an appearance, an illusion. But however, since people don't understand that the world is just an illusion or just an appearance, people cling to it. People are attracted to the world. They think the world is permanent. They think the world is eternal. It's absolute, but it is not. All right. So they are ignorant of the reality of the world. They cling to it. So what is needed is to be enlightened, to understand that the world is just an illusion. And therefore we will no longer cling to the world. And when we no longer cling to the world, then we will be released from this life and we will proceed to nirvana and be one with the Brahman. Now what happens if we don't completely detach ourselves from the world? Then we will just go on and on living, all right? We will never escape the cycle of death and rebirth. The cycle of death and rebirth is called samsara. Okay? Because in Hinduism, they believe that the, that the spirit or the soul transfers from one body to another. The body dies. The spirit continues to live. It continues to exist. And when the body dies, it will go on to, well, transfer into another body. This is samsara. This is a cycle of death and rebirth. Okay? Now, if we are able to escape or be liberated from the cycle of death and rebirth, samsara, then we attain moksha. And when we attain moksha, we will be one with the Brahman and we will go to nirvana. All right. But what guides, or what is the law which is the basis for this cycle, this reincarnation? It's the law of karma. Karma simply states that a good deed will result to will result to something good. If you do something bad, the result will be something bad. So imagine if you're in your lifetime, if your life has not been good, then in your next life, you're not your life may be some kind of a lower form of life. But if you do something good, then in your next life you will attain a higher level of existence until eventually you will be able to escape the cycle of death and birth. Now, in Hinduism, they recognize three possible paths or yogas or ways to attain moksha or salvation. The first is the method of action or the path of action. They call this the karma yoga, right? So here, which is a very popular way of salvation, it lays emphasis on the idea that we can be liberated if we do our own duties, if we do our own dharma or obligations. And we have obligations to our family, we have obligations to society, we have obligations to our fellow men. So if you do good acts, you will be released from this samsara. You will attain liberation through your good deeds. Okay? Now the second is the way of salvation or the way of knowledge or jnana yoga. So the basic premise is that if we understand the cause of suffering or the cause of this bondage of cycle of death and rebirth, which is ignorance, if we overcome ignorance, then we will attain our moksha. And of course, we are able to overcome ignorance through knowledge. So we study, we gain, knowledge about reality, about the illusion, about Maya, and therefore we will attain liberation and we will reach the Brahman. Okay? And then the third one is by way of devotion or bhakti yoga. So here, it's very popular to common people. They attain salvation by way of devotion to gods. So they pray, they do sacrifices, etc., etc. So by being, uh, by being a devoted follower of a particular uh, God, personal God, then they can attain liberation. Okay, so the human person is, like that. He's an Atman, and he must be able to attain liberation through this different path, and then attain uh, moksha and reach nirvana and be one with the Brahman. Okay. Now the next is Buddhism. Now, Buddhism is an offshoot of Hinduism. Okay, and the founder of Buddhism is this prince called Siddhartha Gautama Buddha. And the Buddhist teachings can actually be traced to the life of Siddhartha Gautama. Buddha is a title which means enlightened or awakened one, the awakened one. Okay, so uh, the teachings of Buddhism is based on the spiritual journey of the Buddha or of Siddhartha. Okay, and the story of Siddhartha is that he was uh, he was a prince. Okay, he was a prince, and he enjoyed, of course, the luxurious life in the palace. And he was very much protected by his father inside the palace because there was this uh, prophecy that he can either be a king of this world or a king of the spiritual, the other world. Of course, his father wanted him to be the king of this world because he will be the one to succeed him in the throne. So the father asked, how could this happen? And this could happen if the young prince will experience for himself the real life. And by that, it means that life that is different from the life inside the palace, the life outside of the palace, which is suffering. Okay, and he will realize this idea, this quality of suffering of life, if he's going to see three things: an old man, a sick person, and a dead man. Okay, so the king protected Siddhartha. He was never allowed to go out of the palace. Okay, because the king does not want him to, uh, to see all these things. But eventually, when he was older, Siddhartha was able to escape or go out of the palace. And based on the prophecy, he saw these three things. He saw an old man, he saw a sick man, and a corpse, a dead man. And that's when he realized that life is different outside of the palace. And he realized this must be life, full of suffering. So he did not return to the palace. Instead, he searched for answers. Well, first, he encountered an Indian ascetic, and of course, you know, the ascetic, he lived a very, you know, a very simple, extreme self-denial and poverty. But when he followed the ascetic, he became very weak, that he can no longer walk, he can no longer, you know, move. He felt useless in society. So he realized that extreme asceticism is not the right way. The extreme of luxury is asceticism. That's the right way. So he instead he realized that he has to pursue the middle way. Okay, a life that is not luxurious and not ascetic. Okay, so the teachings of the Buddha is centered on this, the right understanding of reality, in order that we gain enlightenment. So when he was out of the palace, started meditating, and he actually meditated under the Bodhi tree. Okay, so he meditated under the Bodhi tree, and after meditating under the Bodhi tree, that's when the Buddha realized he actually became a Buddha. Siddhartha became a Buddha. He became the awakened or the enlightened, and he attained a different understanding of reality. Okay, that the universe is a system of interconnected, inseparable parts and composed of all the varieties of life that move from one form to another. Okay? So, the Buddha reached this state of bliss, utter detachment from the physical world, which is called nirvana. So, the teaching of Buddhism is different from Hinduism. In fact, uh, as we have said, Buddhism is a breakaway from Hinduism. First, they don't subscribe to the authority of the Brahmins. The Brahmins are the highest, you know, highest in the Indian caste. These are the priests, okay, who who taught about the Buddhas, about the Vedas, right? So, and they believe that nirvana is in the afterlife. But according to the Buddha, life or nirvana can be attained here in this life. Okay, so the essence of the teaching of the Buddha is contained in what we call the Four Noble Truths. Okay, the Four Noble Truths. This is what he discovered or realized after meditating under the Buddha tree. And what are these Four Noble Truths? That first, there is suffering. Life is suffering. Okay, we suffer because first, the four natural suffering, we suffer because we are born. Okay, we of course we will get old, we will get sick, and we will die. So these are the natural sufferings. Okay, of course there are our self-made suffering. Self-made, it's the, of course, naturally we are born, we get sick, we get old, and we die. These are natural things. But we can have fear of this, fear of dying, fear of disease. All right. So the fear is self-made. So there is suffering. All right. And the second truth is that there is a cause of this suffering. And what is the cause of this suffering? Well, the cause is that we have so many desires. Desire for life, desire for this, desire for that. And because of these so many desires, and these desires cannot be attained, we suffer. Okay? There are so many desires, and we become greedy, we become lustful. Okay? Because of this excessive desire, we suffer. The third truth is that there is a cessation, an end to suffering. Okay, there will be an end to suffering. So life is not all that is suffering. Suffering is not permanent. So it's just one of the illusions of the world, an appearance of the world. There will be an end to suffering. And the fourth is there is a way to the cessation. There's a way to the end of suffering. In this way, the end of suffering is what we call the eightfold path. Okay, the eightfold path, which is the middle way. Okay, the middle way. Now, let's go to Chinese philosophy. And this Chinese philosophy is represented by the two major philosophies, Taoism and Confucianism. So, of course, Taoism is based on the teaching of the philosopher Lao Tzu. Okay, so he's a legendary philosopher, Chinese philosopher, uh, just probably few decades ahead of Confucius. Okay, and he is considered to be the author of the main Taoist text entitled the Tao Te Ching. Okay, so what is the main conception of Taoism of man? That man is part of nature. Okay, so this conception of man is based on the Taoist understanding that the whole of the universe, okay, follows certain universal unchanging laws, and man should live his life according to these unchanging universal laws, the way of the Tao. Okay, the way of the Tao. And what is this way of the Tao? Well, the way of the Tao simply says that we have to follow nature. Okay, we have to follow the universe because nature or the universe has its own laws. Okay, and these laws are permanent. These laws are irreversible. They are unchanging. Okay, so if we view nature or the universe holistically, then we will see it as something that possesses harmony, beauty, order, calm, power, etc., etc. But when we consider the universe as fragmented, if we try to disrupt the natural flow of things, we try to divide, we try to differentiate, then the result is chaos, unhappiness, disorder, error, suffering, etc. Okay? So we have to follow, man must follow the laws of nature, the natural law. But what does it mean to follow the way of nature or to follow the way of all things? Okay? He said that the world or the laws of nature is changeable. There are many laws that are changeable, but there is something that does not change. He calls this is called the invariables. Okay, we should understand the invariables, the unchanging laws of nature. And one of the laws that govern the change in nature and things, the most fundamental is this law about the irrever- the law of reversion. It simply says that when a thing reaches one extreme, it reverts it goes back to the other extreme. So if you are farthest here, it's like an equilibrium. It will go this way. You go to the extreme, you go this way. So the idea is maintain a perfect equilibrium. Okay, maintain a perfect equilibrium of a balance of all this. Let things go its natural way. So if when you're very high, then the natural consequence will be you will be very low, and if you're very low, you're very high. So just uh, following the natural flow of things, right? So from this theory of reversing comes another theory in Taoism, and that is the Wu Wei. Wu Wei theory. Wu means nothing, okay, which is a name, Wu Wei, okay, and of course Wei is to act. So when you say Wu Wei, it means non-acting, right? So it's translated as no activity or no action. However, it does not really mean doing nothing at all, because in the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu said, "You accomplish something by doing nothing. Everything is accomplished by doing nothing." But what it really means is that lesser activity. avoiding excess, acting naturally, acting spontaneously, avoiding artificiality, avoiding excess. Okay? Because when we do something in excess, the result is chaos. Okay? So, imagine water. Water is so soft, and yet it's able to carve its way on rocks. Okay? So, we go with the flow, act spontaneously, attain perfect equilibrium. Okay? Because the universe has its own soft and invisible power. Okay? So it if you do something excessively, then it becomes harmful. You don't really attain what you want to attain. Okay? So follow the way of the Tao. Now, lastly is Confucianism, and the Confucian concept of the human person is centered on the proper conduct of human society. The founder, of course, of Confucianism is Confucius. Okay, and central to the Confucian teaching is the cultivation of our virtues, of our human virtues. Okay, the total development of the human person. So Confucius wanted his disciples, his students, not just to be learned, not just to be literati. They want he wants them to be useful or contributor to the society. Okay, and Confucius also teaches that we have to maintain good relationship with one another because the development of our personality, of our virtues, takes place within the context of human relationships. And the basic one, there are two basic human relationships: our relationship in the family, and therefore he Confucius teaches filial piety, respect for our parents, respect for the elders. Okay, and then of course the other is ritual. Okay, propriety. Okay, so ritual and filial piety are the ways in which we should act towards others. But of course, the main virtue is human heartedness or ren. Okay, humans. And the ren can be expressed in many ways. One of the very popular expression of Ren or human heartedness is the golden rule. Do to others what you want others to do to you, and do not do to others what you don't want them to do to you. Now, the perfect ideal of the human person, the ideal person, is what is called the Junchu or the gentleman. The Junchu is not just a scholar, he is actually a gentleman. He is a sage, the wise. Okay, so uh, he's a very simple person. He develops his virtues. He is contributor to the society. Before, when the Junsu is uh, an aristocratic, the gentleman can the Junsu can only be a person can only be a Junsu if he is part of the nobility. But Confucius changed that anybody can be a Jinsu for as long as he develops and cultivates his virtues. Okay, and a good leader, of course, is a leader that is an who is an embodiment of all the virtues. And many people say, of course, that the model of a gentleman or a Jinsu is Confucius himself. So that's our introduction to these uh, different philosophical notions. We're going to discuss them in details in the succeeding lectures. And watch out for the next part of this lecture, which is a survey of the different philosophical notions of man based on the Western tradition. So thank you very much for listening. Stay safe and God bless.